It's time to get rowdy with Rusty this week in wrestling on That Way Cool Wrestling Show Breakout.
Hello, it's time to get rowdy with Rusty on episode number 6, half a dozen, and it's been your pleasure. For April 19th, 2020, we start this week with another episode of not an episode, there's no such thing, an episode of Dark Side of the Ring, Jimmy Snuka. Now, what this episode was not only a career retrospective of Jimmy Snuka's career, but also mainly the circumstances surrounding the death of Nancy Argentina and if Jimmy Snuka had anything to do with it. Irv Munchnick has been involved with trying to expose this and one thing after another. The Dark Side of the Ring talked about how Vince McMahon was involved. Later on, with a post show that they had, Greg the Hammer Valentine said that Vince McMahon paid him $80,000 to keep his mouth shut about Snuka's involvement in the murders. A day or so before that happened, Snuka was also married, so he was having an affair with Nancy on the side. And a day or so before the murders happened with Nancy, Snuka had gotten into an argument with his wife and beat her, and she ran next door to Buddy Rogers' house, Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, which is what led to Buddy Rogers telling Vince McMahon that he no longer wanted to be on the road with Snuka. But that's another story for another day. The show was really good. I think it's pretty clear that Snuka did have something to do with the murders and maybe actually even did the murders, but I wasn't there. Having said that, though, it was a really good documentary, and Snuka was found liable in civil court for the death of Nancy Argentina. But here in the U.S., even if you're found liable of anything like that, if you don't pay, all you can do is get a judgment against the other party that doesn't pay, just like O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson hasn't paid $1 of his judgment. Anyway, moving right along, the WWE Housecleaning after WrestleMania continued this week with many releases. I can't go through all of them. Danny J pushing the buttons back at DJ B would throw me off the thing, but there was a lot of releases from NXT, most of which you don't know, but I'll give you the most notable ones from the WWE main roster. EC3, Michael Hunter, Ethan Carter III, Michael Hunter is his real name, Eric Young, Eric Rowan, Rusev, Leo Rush, Kurt Angle was a backstage agent, Heath Slater, Drake Maverick, who was Rockstar Spud in TNA, Kurt Hawkins, Zack Ryder, Luke Gallows, and Carl Anderson. And let me stop right there for a minute. With Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson getting released, that should put the AJ Styles faction in some jeopardy there. I mean, AJ Styles had sort of like an old style Horseman thing going on there. But how are you going to have Horsemen if you're down to like 2 people? So it ought to be interesting to see what they do with AJ Styles now. He should just get out of his contract and come to AEW. Sarah Logan, who used to wrestle as Crazy Mary Dobson on the independent circuit, knew her. She used to date Madman Pondo. Epico, No Way Jose, which is not a big loss there. Mike Bennett and Maria Kanellis. Maria was nice to me in Charlotte a couple of years ago. Love you, Maria. If you ever get a divorce from Mike, come see me. Soto, Lance Storm, Scott Armstrong, Shane Helms, and many, many more. As I said, there was a lot from NXT, but it's too numerous to get into. The WWE also canceled a show in Saudi Arabia, and the show that they canceled in Saudi Arabia will lose them $30 million. So I don't know about you, but that's a lot of change. So I'm thinking because of the XFL dying last week, and then these releases, and then the loss of the $30 million, even though WWE will sit there and say, oh, it was because of the coronavirus. Bull crap. They're looking at their bottom line to keep their profits up so that they can then say we're profitable at the end of the year after everybody forgets that all these people got released. That's just my opinion. I'm no WWE fan. Moving on, some sad news here to report. Howard Finkel, longtime office employee and WWE ring announcer, died this week at the age of 69. He had some long-time health issues, not sure what all those was. Jim Cornette said he was one of the most loyal employees and started in the office as an employee in approximately 1981 or 82 with his so-called Finkel report, which was just an inner office kind of report that Howard would give to the office every morning about what was going on in wrestling and everything. And Vince would always joke if Howard hadn't got there or if the Finkel report hadn't made its rounds, he would say, hey, pal, in that Vince voice, hey, pal, has anyone seen the Finkel report this morning? So Howard Finkel was not just a ring announcer like most people think, even though he was one of the greats. He was an office employee for the WWF and also was a ring announcer, and then also worked as a ring announcer for the MSG, Madison Square Garden. He happened to have the distinction of being the first WWF employee when the WWF began in 1980. You can check out Jim Cornette's tribute on episode 327 of the Jim Cornette podcast. Rest in peace, Howard Finkel. I never met you, but you're one of the greats, dude. Moving right along, as we said here a minute ago, and as we said last week, the XFL is dead and has filed for bankruptcy. $300 million of Vinnie Mac WWE stock down the tubes, and most likely once it goes through bankruptcy court, it will be more than the $300 million that I just gave you as a figure. WWE has stopped releasing subscriber numbers to the WWE network, which is usually the first sign of failure of the WWE network. So it hasn't been a good week for the WWE this week. But we'll have to see. They always seem to bounce back. They've got more lives than a TNA broadcast. Moving right along to AEW, Danny J's other favorite product. The show opened with a Jake the Snake Roberts interview, or not an interview, a pre-taped segment talking about Lance Archer as a video plays with Lance Archer. Once again this week, Tony Schiavone and Jericho were being good on the mic. Missed Jim Ross on the main commentary. Get back to Ross in a minute. But anytime Excalibur's not on the show, it's a good day for me. We then see Lance Archer and Colt Cabana in a TNT Championship tourney match. Archer wins, but Colt wrestled a serious match. And if you've seen many of Colt's matches over the years, like I have, coming from North Carolina, as I used to live in North Carolina for the first 38 years of my life, Colt Cabana is more of a comedy wrestler, and I don't like anybody that doesn't take wrestling seriously. But in this case, now that Colt's in AEW, he's starting to be more serious, so he's showing off that he really can wrestle, and he's not just a comedy act. Moving on, we then go to a Britt Baker video, which is like, she's a real life dentist, and she went to school just 5 minutes away from where I live at the University of Pittsburgh. And long story short, they had a video of her at the dentist office, and it was like Chinese water torture because Britt Baker is a good wrestler, but she's not a heel. She was awful. Then moving on into the show, we then had a match between Britt Baker and a newcomer, Sandra Golden. Britt Baker wins. The other match was like 2 out of 5 stars. Nothing really to write home about. Moving on, Sammy Guevara and what Jericho would call Pineapple Pete And I'm not sure anybody actually found out Pineapple Pete's real name or working name, but Jericho called him Pineapple Pete, and it made me pee on myself just about. But Sammy G versus Pineapple Pete. Sammy wins 2 out of 5 stars. Pineapple Pete can't wrestle. It looked like they were just filling time for TNT. After the match, Sammy curses and calls out Darby Allin. Darby Allin, one of the most rising stars in the AEW, comes out, gets into it with Sammy as Sammy's beating on Pete. And then Sammy does the chicken shit heel thing and takes a powder and runs out of the ring. Moving on, Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford. Yes, I'm a Penelope Ford mark. At ringside versus Chuck Taylor with Orange Cassidy. We got to get rid of Orange Cassidy. I hate him. Penelope with a top rope Frankensteiner-like move. When the ref wasn't looking, Sabian wins 3 out of 5 stars. Moving on, Shawn Spears versus newcomer Justin Law, another jobber type of person, enhancement talent for those of you newer viewers. Jobber is the old version. Sorry, that had been around wrestling too long. A throwaway match, 1 out of 5 stars. I call it a pee break match. And moving on to the main event, Jake Hager versus Jon Moxley in an empty arena match that was taped several weeks ago at Daly's Place in Jacksonville, Florida, when they were there taping shows. It was a pretty good match. It disappointed me a little bit. Jim Ross was on that particular commentary since it was taped pre-recorded 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So anytime you hear Jim Ross, it's always a good day. For me, the match disappointed a little bit, maybe 2 out of 5 stars. Moving on to Danny J's favorite product, is becoming my favorite product too, because MLW keeps it serious these days. Episode number 106, which was the second week of the Superstars Challenge series between MLW and the AAA promotion there in Mexico. We have Doug James from MLW versus Averno from AAA. Averno wins with a 3-star match. We then move on to Team Filthy, Tom Lawler and Dominic Guarini from MLW versus Puma King and Extreme Tiger from AAA. This was a 4-star match. Puma King and Extreme Tiger are stars. Wish they would come to the USA and be on more of a national type platform, but I don't know if we'll ever see that. But they're great. If you get a chance, you should check them out either on MLW or on YouTube. Team Filthy wins, however, after a ref stoppage. There we go. During a chokeout of Extreme Tiger. Moving on, NWA Power, yay! Some realistic pro wrestling, and my old buddy Mickey James's husband, Nick Aldis, will be on there probably. NWA Power had a video this week where they were having the former Wade Barrett, Stu Bennett is his real name. He does commentary for NWA Power, saying that Camille will have her first match this week and she will be speaking. So we'll have to wait and see what Camille has to say. And who is she with? Is she now with Nick? Is she still with Nick Aldis, or is she with someone else there? It's been so long, I forgot who the someone else was. Moving right along, some additional sad news this week. Not sure if many of you remember this or not, but longtime wrestler Dickie Steinborn, who wrestled from 1951 through 1985, passed away at 86 this week. He worked for the NWA, AWA, World Wrestling Council, held many titles in many different promotions, including the NWA Southern Tag Team Championships for Jim Crockett Promotions back in the 60s with his tag team partner and booker, George Becker, the late George Becker. Dickie Steinborn also worked for Vince McMahon Sr.'s WWF, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, before they changed it to the WWF for Vince McMahon Sr. So we send our condolences And prayers out to the friends and family of Dickie Steinborn. Again, he passed away at 86. A longtime wrestler, announcer, booker, and my friend Les Thatcher calls Steinborn one of the greatest workers we ever had. And he will be missed not only by Les Thatcher, but anybody who had the pleasure of knowing Dickie Steinborn. I did not know him, but many of my friends in the wrestling business did. So we send our condolences out, and it just seems like as time goes on, more and more of these guys are dying, and more of my childhood is going away. Lastly, we have a programming note here. Check out former WWF and female wrestler Bobcat, Cindy Snow, right here on 2 programs on the DJB Productions Network, one titled That Way Cool Wrestling Show, which is the big show they hadn't let me on yet because I haven't earned my stripes, but maybe one of these days I'll get on there. Anyway, That Way Cool Wrestling Show with Cindy Snow, hosted by Danny J., president of DJB Productions, and also another show called DJs After Dark with Cindy Snow. Both shows are hosted by Danny, and Cindy was great. I've watched both shows about 2 or 3 times, and both shows are funny, not just because Cindy Snow is on there, even though that was an attraction for me, but both shows are really good, and Danny talks to some of his friends that are DJs on the show, and it's sort of a Howard Stern type of program for the DJs After Dark. And then the other show, That Way Cool Wrestling Show, is a bigger version of this where they try to interview ex-wrestlers and stuff. And on that particular show, That Way Cool Wrestling Show, Cindy talked about her career and being a female in the business and being the first WWF hardcore women's champion and stuff like that. So both shows are good, but if you subscribe to the DJB Productions Network and check out the other programming from months and years past, you'll always get good programming right here on the DJB Productions Network. And that's because I said so. It's not because Danny J paid me anything to say it, because I don't get paid nothing. Well, with that being said, Rusty Loudermilk, I'm out of here. We'll see you next week right here on the DJB Productions Network. That Way Cool Wrestling Show Breakout. Same time, same channel for more wrestling news. Until then, stay safe, everybody, and we'll see you here next week. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to That Way Cool Wrestling Show Breakout. We'll see you at the matches. Goodbye, everybody.